That's just about enough, Howard, the stranger shouted at the troll. Now calm down or I'm going to get rough. The troll stumbled around, unable to see. He inadvertently knocked over the statue of Charming and it fell to the ground. Its head broke off and rolled across the floor. Turn your magic off, sorcerer, the troll cried. Are you going to be a good boy? The stranger demanded. Howard the troll nodded. Yes. The man said a few words in the odd language and his cloud of smoke surrounding the roots had vanished. Now go home and stay there until you learn some manners, the man said to the hulking figure. What would your wife think of your behavior? The troll lowered his eyes in shame and, along with several other ever-afters, exited the gymnasium. Daphne grabbed Sabrina's hand. That's the man from last night, she whispered. Sabrina eyed the stranger closely. Her sister was right. The lunatic who had attacked them the night before had just saved their lives. Then he rushed over to the family and took Granny Rhoda into his arms. Sabrina watched dumbfounded as he gave the old woman a huge kiss and a kiss on the cheek. Are you okay, Mom? Mom? Sabrina, Daphne, and Puck cried at the same time. I'm fine, Jacob, Granny replied. Chapter 5. The man hugged Granny Rhoda tightly and lifted her off her feet. Jacob, put me down, she laughed. I'm an old woman. The man set her back down. You're not so old, he said. You look so thin. And what happened to your nose? It's broken. The man shuffled his feet like a schoolboy who has been caught placing a tag on his teacher's seat. Jacob, what did you do? Granny asked, trying to sound stern while wiping tears of joy from her cheeks. It was nothing, just a little misunderstanding with a frost giant in the pile. I think it makes me look rugged. Puck stepped between the two and shoved his sword under the man's chin. Step away from the old lady or I'll run you through. Puck, this is my son, Granny said, pulling the boy away. Your son, the girls cried. Yes, your Uncle Jacob, the old woman said. Call me Uncle Jake, said the man, opening his arms for a hug the girls didn't deliver. Sabrina was stunned. For the second time in less than 2 months, the sisters had been introduced to a family member who hadn't known existed. Henry didn't tell them about me, the man said, seeming to read the girls' minds. Henry didn't tell them about me either, Granny Rhoda said. Well, I'm finally happy to meet you, said the man with a wink that told them he knew the previous night's encounter was a secret. You must be Daphne, he said. You've got Hank's grin. Hank? Daphne asked. That's what we used to call your dad when he was younger, Uncle Jake said, turning to Sabrina. And that means you're Sabrina. I'm curious, is the mustache and goatee some kind of fad? Am I unaware of, or did you lose a bet? Sabrina scowled and pulled her scarf back up to her nose. Just kidding, Peanut, the man said with a laugh. My name is Sabrina, she said. Sorry, I can't help but give people nicknames. I want a nickname, Daphne cried. How about Shortstop? Uncle Jake said, reaching down and ruffling the little girl's hair. Daphne giggled like she'd just gotten a Christmas present. And this is Puck, Granny said. She had her hands on the boy's shoulders like he was one of her own. I didn't need your help, Puck grunted as Uncle Jack before he could say hello. I had everything under control. Uncle Jake laughed. Listen, kid, you're knee-deep in trouble and you know it. Face it, some of the bad guys have to be handled by adults. Well, I'm a bad guy and you're an adult. Let's see how you handle me, Puck retorted. Boys, Granny shouted, that's enough of this nonsense. Puck's face crinkled like he had just smelled a rotten egg. He huffed and shoved his sword back into his belt and turned toward the exit. Where are you going? Granny Rhoda asked. Away, old lady, the boy snapped as he thrust the doors open. Before anyone could stop him, Puck was gone. Granny watched after him with worried eyes. Sheriff Hampstead hobbled over to the group. His overworked out had broken during the melee and he was having a terrible time keeping his pants up. Rhoda, are you and the children okay? Yes, just a little shaken up. Was anyone hurt? Not seriously, Hamster answered as he looked around to be sure. I've gotten the mayor, Mr. Seven, and Miss White to safety, and I'm asking everyone to go home. Of course, Granny Rhoda said. Sheriff Hampstead, how are you doing? It's been a long time, Uncle Jack said, hugging the policeman. Sabrina looked over at her sister. Apparently the hugging thing that Daphne was always doing ran in the family. Uncle Jake squeezed the man so tightly, Hamster was unable to stop his pants from slipping down to his ankles, revealing boxer shorts with little pink Cupid on them. Do I know you, mister? The sheriff said with his face squished against Jake's chest. Uncle Jake stepped back in surprise. Know me? Of course you know me. Sheriff, this is my son Jacob, Granny Rhoda said. Hamster quickly put up his pants. Rhoda, I didn't know you had another son, he said. Ernest, what are you talking about? Uncle Jake said. You don't remember my brother and me? You caught us cutting school all the time. You took Hank and me down to the jail and locked us in the cell once. You told me that kids who skipped class had to go to prison and break rocks. It scared us half to death. We never cut again. The sheriff studied Uncle Jake's face closely, but it was obvious to anyone that he didn't recognize the man. Sorry, son, I have to chase down a lot of truants. But Granny took her son by the sleeve and pulled him toward the exit before he could finish his sentence. Let us know if you need any help, Sheriff. She hustled the family outside and across the parking lot where they found Mr. Van Winkle sound asleep in his cab. Elvis had crawled into the front seat and was also snoring happily with his head resting on the old man's lap. The sack with the mozzarella and pepper sandwich had been torn open and its contents consumed. When Elvis let out a rather loud bark, Sabrina knew it wouldn't take a detective to figure out who had stolen the cab driver's lunch. You're still not using cars to get around, are you? Uncle Jake said. Why not use a flying carpet or something in the teleportation room? Mira has all kinds of stuff. I prefer to do some things the old-fashioned way, Granny said. Uncle Jake rolled his eyes. Granny Rhoda opened the car door and pushed down the horn. The cabbie jumped in his seat. Sweet mother of pearl, he shouted. What, is it over already? We're ready to go. Mr. Van Winkle rubbed his tired eyes and looked down at Elvis. Then he noticed the remains of his lunch. This dog is a menace, he complained. The big dog licked his lips with an expression that seemed to say, Who? Me? Elvis, that's not very nice, Granny said. We'll stop on the way home and get you something to eat, Mr. Van Winkle. And a cup of coffee, Sabrina grumbled as she climbed into the front seat next to the gassy dog. By the time Mr. Van Winkle pulled the cab into the driveway of the family's two-story yellow house, everyone was a nervous wreck. Granny shoved a handful of bills into the cabbie's hands. Thanks for the ride, the old man said, and Merry Christmas to you. Mr. Van Winkle seemed pleased with his tip. Sure, lady, and remember, the next time you need fast, reliable, and friendly service, call me, he said as he shoved business cards into everyone's hands. But next time the verbal stays home. Moments later, he was gone. This place hasn't changed at all, Uncle Jake said as he marveled at the little house. I bet there's still a dozen frisbees on the roof. Things don't change much in Fairyport Landing, Granny said as she climbed the porch steps to the front door and began to unlock it. Wait a minute, I know something that's different. Why isn't the house decorated for the holidays? The old woman blushed as if she were ashamed. When we were kids, this place had so many lights on it, you could probably see it from space, Uncle Jake told the girls. The electric bill was so thick they had to spiral bind it. We've been a bit busy lately, Granny Rhoda explained. Well, leave the decorating to me then, her son said as he reached into his pocket and took out a long carved wand. I'll have this place looking like the North Pole in no time. Jake, I absolutely forbid it, Granny Rhoda said, but Uncle Jake ignored her. He held the wand aloft and shouted, "Give me some Christmas!" A blinding red-green light illuminated the yard. Within the beams, Sabrina could see tiny particles moving and rearranging into solid objects as zipped across the lawn and grew in size. Suddenly, two enormous inflatable snowmen appeared in the center of the yard. A row of 10-foot candy canes lined the driveway all the way to the end. Red ribbons encircled the porch banisters, and a mechanical Santa Claus in a shiny sleigh landed on top of the mouth of the house. An odd robotic ho 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 blasted out of its mouth. Lines of multicolored blinking lights entwined every tree, bush, and shrub. Even poor Elvis found himself wrapped from head to toe in twinkling lights. Daphne ran to a candy cane, sniffed it, and then gave it a lick. Hello, this is real! Granny rushed to Elvis's side and did her best to free him from his holiday-inspired bonds, while Jake led the girls into the house. "That takes care of the outside," he said. He handed the wand to Sabrina. "Want to give it a try?" Sabrina eyed the wand carefully, just holding it sent a chill through her like nothing she had ever felt. This simple stack of wood packed a lot of power, and Sabrina could feel it all the way down to her toes. "What do I do?" she asked. "Imagine how you want everything to look," Uncle Jake said, as Granny finally entered the room and then asked for it. Sabrina closed her eyes, nodded to herself, and then aimed the wand at the living room. "Sabrina, Grandma absolutely forbid it!" Granny cried, but she was too late again. "Give me some Christmas," Sabrina said, and the light blasted out of the wand. The rearranging particles twisted and turned into forms that eventually became a beautiful white needle tree covered in shiny bulbs and lights, shrouded in tinsel strung with popcorn garlands and topped with a gleaming angel. Mountains of presents were tucked underneath. A choo-choo train raced from room to room on a track, and Bing Crosby crooed "White Christmas" from a stereo, exactly like the one Sabrina and Daphne's parents had owned in New York City. "It's just like home," Daphne cried happily. Jacob Alexander Grimm," Granny yelled. She raced over to Sabrina and took the wand out of her hand. The little charge Sabrina had felt from the wand was gone, and she immediately wished she could get it back. "Oh, Mom, don't be a humbug," Uncle Jake said. "It's the girl's first Christmas in the house. It should be memorable." "I wholeheartedly agree, but I don't think we need magic to do that," Granny said as she put the wand back in her son's hand. "One of the special things about Christmas is that the family decorates the house together." "Says you. Why do something in days when you can do it in seconds?" Granny shook her head as if to say she was disappointed that Uncle Jake didn't understand. The morning slipped into afternoon and finally into evening as Uncle Jake told one hair-raising story after another of his many adventures. The girls hung on his every word. Even Granny was fascinated with her son's tales, and eventually decided to order pizza for dinner rather than miss another of Jake's stories while she was cooking. "So how come we've never met you before?" Daphne asked as she helped herself to another slice of pepperoni. "Well, I haven't been around in a while. I've been traveling the world and getting into trouble," Uncle Jake said with a grin. "For a while, I lived in Prague with Tom Tom, and I spent some time in India, Russia, Japan, Germany, and even Costa Rica. But lately, I've been working with the Anderson triplets." "What are they?" Serena said. "You don't know who the Anderson triplets are?" Uncle Jake said, in a way that made Sabrina feel self-conscious. "Henry chose to keep the children out of the loop when it came to the family business," Granny Ryder said. "All of it?" The older one nodded. That's the end of this video. I'll send more videos later.